Don't open that door, Seo-yeon whispered, but the black sedan had already stopped beside her. Han Seo-yeon stumbled against the polished hood, one hand gripping the cold metal while the other held her torn waitress apron against her chest. Behind her, hurried footsteps struck the marble sidewalk, sharp and closing fast. The neon signs of Gangnam smeared red and blue across the rain-slicked pavement, and the smell of coffee from the late-night cafe beside her mixed with wet asphalt. The rear door of the sedan opened. A man in a black suit stepped out, but he didn't reach for her. He simply looked at her with the kind of stillness that made the men behind her stop several yards away. Seo-yeon knew that face. Everyone in Seoul's nightlife industry knew it. Kang Tae-jun, 34. Chairman of Kang International Holdings in public, and the most feared name behind Seoul's criminal underworld in private. His charcoal suit was perfectly pressed despite the rain, his black hair untouched by the wind, one silver watch catching the streetlight as he lifted his wrist.
"Get in," he said.
His voice was quiet. "They're looking for you." Seo-yeon stared at him. Why would a man like you care about a waitress? Tae-jun's eyes moved briefly to the cheap black shoes soaked through at her feet, then returned to hers. "I don't." A car door slammed behind them. Tae-jun opened the sedan door wider. "But I need a fiancé." The words made Seo-yeon's fingers loosen around her apron. For 3 months, she had worked double shifts at an upscale Seoul restaurant, carrying trays beneath crystal chandeliers while men in tailored suits discussed millions of dollars over imported wine. Tonight, one of those men had offered her a different kind of trouble. She had refused. Then she had discovered that refusing him was not an option. "A fake fiancé?" she asked.
Tae-jun nodded once.
3 months. "And what do I get?" "Enough money to walk away from every debt you have." Her eyes narrowed. He knew about her debts. That should have frightened her more than the footsteps behind them. Instead, she looked at the expensive leather seats inside his car, then at the 2 men approaching through the
"Then."
"And what do you get?" Tae-jun leaned slightly closer, leaving enough space between them for her to step away. "Protection from a family that wants to force me into a marriage."
He paused.
"And a woman beside me whom nobody can question." Seo-yeon gave a small, disbelieving laugh. "You picked a waitress?" "I picked someone nobody would expect." His gaze held hers. Someone they would underestimate. The approaching men were close now. One called her name. Seo-yeon's hand tightened around the edge of the door. She could smell Tae-jun's clean cedar cologne beneath the leather interior, hear the soft ticking of the cooling engine, feel rainwater slipping from her hair onto her collar. "If I say yes," she whispered, "you don't own me." Something changed in his expression. Not warmth. Something quieter. "You never will." He extended his hand. After one long second, Seo-yeon took it. His palm was warm. Hers was cold. Tae-jun pulled her into the car and shut the door. As the sedan moved into traffic, he placed a thin black folder between them. On its cover were 2 words that made her breath stop. Fiancé contract. Inside was her photograph, her name, and one final condition she hadn't expected. She had to appear beside Kang Tae-jun at his family estate the following morning as his future wife. By sunrise, the black folder lay open on the kitchen island between them, its thick paper smelling faintly of ink and leather, while pale light spilled across the polished stone. Seo-yeon had read the contract twice. She still hadn't touched the pen. 3 months, she said, tapping the page with one finger. Public appearances. Family dinners. No pretending in private. Tae-jun stood across from her, sleeves rolled once above his wrists, a cup of untouched black coffee sending a bitter aroma into the quiet room. "Correct. And I can leave whenever I want." "Yes." "Then why does this feel like I'm the one being trapped?" Tae-jun's mouth moved almost imperceptibly. "Because you're smart enough to understand what you're agreeing to." He pushed a second document toward her. "Your debts will be paid this morning. Your apartment lease will be extended for 1 year. Your salary will be transferred weekly." Seo-yeon looked at the numbers. The amount was more money than she had ever seen attached to her own name. Her thumb pressed against the edge of the paper until it whitened. "You really prepared all this overnight." "I prepare before I make offers." And if I refuse? You walk away. No threat. No raised voice. Just certainty. Seo-yeon closed the folder. Then I have one condition. Tae-jun lifted his eyes. Say it. You don't treat me like a prop when we're in public. The room went still except for the soft hum of the refrigerator. If I'm standing beside you, she continued, I stand beside you, not behind you. Tae-jun studied her for several seconds, then reached for the pen. Agreed. He signed first. The ink scratched across the paper, sharp against the silence. Seo-yeon took the pen next. Her hand paused above the signature line. She could still walk away. Instead, she wrote her name.
Han Seo-yeon.
The contract became real with one final stroke. Tae-jun closed the folder and stood. We leave in 20 minutes. Where? My family estate. Her fingers stopped on the zipper of the small overnight bag she had packed. Today, my family has been waiting for my fiancé. He glanced toward the clock. They've been told you're coming. 20 minutes later, Seo-yeon stepped from the elevator into the underground garage, wearing a simple cream coat borrowed from Tae-jun's staff. The fabric was soft against her wrists, but the polished floor beneath her shoes echoed every step. A row of black vehicles waited under white fluorescent lights, their engines humming quietly. Tae-jun opened the rear door for her.
She stopped.
You know what happens if your family hates me? They will. That doesn't bother you? No, he looked at her. What bothers me is whether you'll let them make you smaller. The drive toward the estate passed in silence, Seoul's towers sliding across the tinted windows like silver blades. When the gates finally opened, Seo-yeon saw a sprawling stone residence beyond rows of trimmed trees, its windows glowing warm against the morning haze. Tae-jun's driver stopped beneath the covered entrance. Before Seo-yeon could reach for the door, Tae-jun spoke quietly. One more rule. She turned.
What?
He adjusted his cuff and looked directly at her. Inside that house, they will test whether you're worthy of standing beside me. He opened the door. Cold morning air entered the car. Don't try to impress them. Seo-yeon stepped onto the stone. Then what should I do? Tae-jun followed her out, his shoes striking the granite with a measured click. Make them regret underestimating you. The front doors opened before they reached them. An elderly housekeeper stepped aside, and beyond her stood a long dining room filled with polished silver, crystal glasses, and waiting faces. Seo-yeon barely crossed the threshold before every conversation stopped. Then Tae-jun placed his hand lightly at her back and announced, This is Han Seo-yeon, my fiancé. A woman at the far end of the table slowly put down her teacup. The waitress, she asked, and Seo-yeon realized the test had already begun. Seo-yeon did not lower her eyes. She simply placed both hands on the back of the empty chair beside Tae-jun and pulled it out with a quiet scrape against the dark wooden floor. The sound carried through the dining room. Crystal glasses stopped trembling in waiting hands, silverware rested untouched beside porcelain plates, and the scent of grilled beef and pine wood smoke hung beneath the warm chandelier light. Yes, Seo-yeon said, meeting the woman's gaze. The waitress. A few people exchanged amused looks. The woman at the head of the table was Kang Tae-jun's aunt, elegant in a deep emerald dress, with a diamond bracelet shining against her wrist. You must understand our concern, she said. A woman who serves food for a living suddenly becoming the future wife of this family is rather. She let the sentence hang. Tae-jun pulled out the chair beside his own and sat down without answering. Seo-yeon sat with him. Unexpected, she finished. I imagine it is. The aunt's lips tightened. You seem very comfortable. Seo-yeon folded her hands over the cream coat resting against her lap. Mr. Kang told me I was expected to sit beside him. Tae-jun's eyes shifted toward her for half a
second.
It was the first time since entering the house that he looked almost approving. Dinner began. Plates arrived one after another, the porcelain warm beneath Seo-yeon's fingertips, steam carrying the sharp fragrance of garlic, sesame oil, and roasted meat. Nobody asked her about her favorite food or what she liked to do. Instead, they asked questions designed to measure how little she belonged. Where had she studied? How much did she earn? Had she ever attended a formal gala? Could she speak English well enough to accompany Tae-jun overseas? Seo-yeon answered each one without embellishment. Then a younger woman across the table smiled into her wine glass. At least you must be good at serving people. The remark drew a few quiet laughs. Seo-yeon placed her chopsticks neatly beside her plate. I am. She looked at the woman. That's why I know when someone is pretending to be polite. Silence fell so quickly that the ticking clock near the hallway became audible. Tae-jun lifted his water glass, hiding the smallest movement at the corner of his mouth. The woman flushed. You are rather bold for someone in your position. Seo-yeon looked down at the tablecloth, then reached for the teapot. I'm not in a position. I'm a person. She poured tea into her own cup. The amber liquid struck porcelain with a soft, steady sound. Before anyone could answer, Tae-jun placed his hand over the contract folder resting beside his chair and moved it deliberately to the center of the table. Her position, he said, is beside me. His voice was calm, but every word landed with the weight of a closed door. And anyone who has a problem with that can speak to me. No one did. After dinner, Tae-jun led Seo-yeon through a long corridor lined with black and white family portraits. Their footsteps echoed against polished stone, while warm recessed lights reflected off the glass frames. You didn't have to defend me, she said. I wasn't defending you.
He stopped.
I was correcting them. Seo-yeon looked at him. What's the difference? Defending means I think you can't handle them. His gaze stayed on hers. I know you can. She almost smiled. Then his phone vibrated.
Tae-jun
Glanced at the screen, and the quiet confidence in his face disappeared. He turned the phone toward her. A photograph had arrived from an unknown number. It showed Seo-yeon standing beside him outside the restaurant the previous night. Beneath it was a single sentence. Your new fiancé is already being watched. Tae-jun locked the screen. Tomorrow, he said, you come with me to the first public event as my fiancé. And this time, Seo-yeon understood that pretending to belong beside Kang Tae-jun would no longer remain inside his family's walls. The ballroom doors opened beneath a wash of white light, and Seo-yeon stepped beside Tae-jun into a room filled with crystal chandeliers, polished marble, and the low murmur of Seoul's wealthiest families. Camera flashes burst across the entrance, hot and blinding, while the scent of expensive perfume and champagne drifted through the air. Tae-jun's hand settled lightly at her back, guiding her forward as reporters called his name.
Kang Tae-jun.
Is this the woman you're marrying? When is the wedding? Where did you meet her? Seo-yeon kept walking. She wore a simple midnight blue dress chosen by Tae-jun's staff, its fabric cool against her skin, while the thin engagement ring on her finger caught every flash. Smile, Tae-jun murmured without moving his lips. You're glaring. They're asking whether I'm marrying you for money. Then look like you have better options. She almost laughed. Instead, she lifted her chin and placed her hand on his arm. The cameras erupted again. For the first time, the room saw them not as a powerful businessman and a poor waitress, but as a couple who appeared completely certain of each other.
Tae-jun noticed.
His fingers tightened slightly against her back before relaxing.
Good, he said.
Now stay close. They entered the reception hall, where a string quartet played beneath golden chandeliers and waiters moved between tables carrying silver trays. Seo-yeon recognized the rhythm immediately. She had spent years reading crowded dining rooms without being noticed, watching hands, faces, glassware, and doors while everyone else watched the stage. Tae-jun stopped near a tall window overlooking the city. 5 minutes, he said. Then we leave.
Why?
Because you hate these events. How do you know? You keep counting exits. Seo-yeon glanced at him. Maybe I learned from the best. His eyes sharpened, but before he could answer, an attendant approached with 2 champagne glasses. Seo-yeon reached for one. Then she stopped. The man holding the tray wore white gloves, but one cuff was stained with a faint gray mark. More important, he wasn't wearing the small silver pin required by the hotel service staff. Her gaze moved to his hands.
No tremor.
No wedding ring. No name badge. His eyes passed over the room once, then settled on Tae-jun. Seo-yeon put her hand over Tae-jun's wrist. Don't drink that. He looked down at her.
Why?
Because that man isn't serving champagne. The attendant turned. Seo-yeon moved first. She stepped directly between him and Tae-jun, knocking the tray sideways with her forearm. Crystal struck marble and shattered into harmless pieces as guests recoiled. Security rushed forward. Tae-jun caught Seo-yeon's elbow and pulled her behind him, his voice suddenly cold enough to cut through the music. Nobody moves. The quartet stopped. The ballroom fell silent. The attendant was restrained before he could reach anything hidden beneath his jacket. Tae-jun looked back at Seo-yeon. How did you know? She stared at the broken glass glittering beneath the chandelier. Because waitresses learn to notice what everyone else ignores. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then Tae-jun removed his jacket and placed it around her shoulders, blocking the cameras from capturing her shaking hands. From now on, he said quietly, you don't walk anywhere without me. Seo-yeon looked up at him. Is that another contract rule? No, his eyes held hers. That's my decision. And across the ballroom, behind a wall of security, someone who had expected Tae-jun's new fiancé to be helpless was now watching her very differently. The ballroom had barely recovered from the shattered champagne glasses when Tae-jun led Seo-yeon through a private corridor, his jacket still resting over her shoulders. The wool was warm against her skin, carrying the faint scent of cedar and his cologne, while the marble beneath their shoes clicked beneath the distant murmur of security teams. You said 5 minutes, she whispered. That was before someone tried to use you to reach me. He opened a side door and guided her into a quiet lounge lined with dark wood and tall windows overlooking Seoul. A fire crackled behind glass, casting amber light across the leather sofa. Seo-yeon removed his jacket and held it toward him. You can have this back. Tae-jun didn't take it. Keep it. Why? Because you're still cold. She glanced at her hands. He was right. Before she could answer, the door opened and Tae-jun's communications director entered with a tablet. The press is waiting outside. They want a photograph of you together before you leave. Seo-yeon stared at him. After what happened? Especially after what happened, Tae-jun said. The director hesitated. They need reassurance that the engagement is stable. Seo-yeon folded her arms. So we smile? We look certain, Tae-jun replied. There's a difference. Minutes later, they stood beneath the grand staircase where dozens of reporters waited behind velvet ropes. Camera flashes bounced off the polished floor. Questions rose from every direction. Mr. Kang, is the engagement still happening? Who is Han Seo-yeon? Was the incident connected to your fiancé? Tae-jun remained composed, but Seo-yeon could feel the tension in his arm beneath her hand. Then one reporter called loudly, is she really your fiancé? Or is this just another business arrangement? The question changed the room.
Tae-jun looked at Seo-yeon.
She saw the calculation in his eyes. They had a contract. Nothing more. Yet every camera was waiting for an answer. We're getting married, Tae-jun said. That's the answer. The reporters surged closer. Someone shouted that the engagement needed proof. Another demanded a photograph showing affection.
Tae-jun leaned toward Seo-yeon.
I'm going to kiss you. Her eyes widened. That's not in the contract. I know.
He paused.
Do you want me to? The noise around them seemed to disappear beneath the soft hum of the chandelier. Seo-yeon looked at the cameras, then back at him. She gave one small nod. Tae-jun placed one hand gently beside her face and gave her a brief, respectful kiss, just long enough for the cameras to capture the image. When he stepped back, Seo-yeon's fingers remained lightly curled around his sleeve. Neither moved immediately. The photographers erupted. Flash after flash painted the staircase white. Then Tae-jun quietly said, "We're done," and guided her away. Inside the waiting car, the city lights streaked across the tinted windows. Seo-yeon finally broke the silence. You could have warned me before. Tae-jun looked straight ahead. I did. You said you were going to kiss me. You didn't say it would feel. She stopped.
Feel what? He asked.
Seo-yeon turned toward the window. Different. His reflection in the glass remained still. Then his phone vibrated. A message appeared on the screen. The engagement is convincing. too convincing. Your enemies are asking who she really is. Tae-jun locked the phone and looked at Seo-yeon. From tomorrow morning, you move into my residence. She turned sharply. That wasn't part of the agreement. I know.
His voice lowered.
That's why I'm asking. By 7 the next morning, Seo-yeon's suitcase stood beside the marble staircase of Tae-jun's residence, while 2 staff members carried the last of her belongings through the quiet foyer. Sunlight poured through floor-to-ceiling windows, turning the polished stone gold, and the scent of freshly brewed coffee drifted from the kitchen. She had barely stepped toward the stairs when Tae-jun appeared in a dark suit, fastening his cufflinks. You're early, he said. You said I was moving in. I assumed you meant immediately. I did. You could have given me 1 day. I could have. He picked up her suitcase himself, but I didn't. Seo-yeon followed him upstairs, her shoes making soft sounds against the warm oak floor. Her new room was across from his, separated by a narrow hallway and a pair of glass doors overlooking the garden. She placed her overnight bag on the bed. This still feels like part of the contract.
Tae-jun set her suitcase down.
Then make it your choice. She looked at him. What does that mean? If you want to leave, leave. He stepped back from the doorway. But if you stay, stay because you decided to. Seo-yeon watched him disappear down the hall. For several seconds, her fingers rested on the suitcase handle. Then she opened it. She stayed. By noon, the arrangement had become the subject of every major entertainment and business outlet in Seoul. Photographs of Tae-jun placing his jacket around her shoulders filled television screens and phone feeds. Some called her a lucky waitress. Others called her a social climber. One headline described her as the mystery woman who captured Seoul's most untouchable bachelor. Seo-yeon closed the tablet and returned to the kitchen. She had spent years being ignored while carrying plates through crowded dining rooms. Now strangers were studying her face, as if it belonged to them. Tae-jun entered behind her. You don't have to read any of it. I wasn't reading.
She turned.
I was counting insults. His eyes dropped to the tablet. How many? 27. Only 27? She almost smiled. Then his phone rang. He answered without taking his eyes from her. Yes. A pause.
His jaw tightened. No.
She stays with me. Seo-yeon slowly lowered the tablet. Who was that? Someone who wanted to know whether you were temporary. And what did you say? That you're not. He ended the call. The answer remained between them. That afternoon, Tae-jun brought her to his private office. Unlike the rest of the residence, the room was cold and spare, with dark shelves, steel-framed windows, and the faint smell of leather and black coffee. He placed a newspaper on the desk. A photograph of Seo-yeon from her old restaurant was printed across the front page. Beside it was another image of her entering his car. They're trying to define you, he said. Let them. She looked at him. Why? Because the more they underestimate you, the safer you are. Seo-yeon folded the newspaper. And if they stop underestimating me?
Tae-jun's gaze hardened.
Then they become dangerous. He reached for his phone again. Tonight, you will attend a private dinner with me. Another performance? No, he
paused.
This time, my enemies will be there. Seo-yeon placed the newspaper down. And what happens if they ask who I really am? Tae-jun walked toward her until only a few feet separated them. You tell them exactly what I told you to tell them. That I'm your fiancé. Exactly. He looked toward the clock. And tomorrow night, we announce our wedding date. Seo-yeon's fingers tightened around the edge of the desk. The 3-month arrangement had suddenly acquired a deadline neither of them had planned. Tomorrow, their fake engagement would become a public promise of marriage. And once Seoul believed it, Tae-jun's enemies would have no reason to leave his new fiancé alone. The wedding announcement was supposed to be the moment Seo-yeon finally looked like she belonged beside Kang Tae-jun, but the ballroom doors opened to a silence that felt heavier than applause. Crystal chandeliers scattered warm light across black marble, champagne glasses gleamed on linen-covered tables, and the scent of pinewood smoke from the grand fireplace mixed with expensive perfume. Seo-yeon walked beside Tae-jun in a midnight blue dress, her fingers resting lightly against his arm. Cameras waited at the far end of the room. Executives, family members, and powerful guests turned toward them as Tae-jun approached the microphone. "Tomorrow," he said, his voice carrying effortlessly through the hall, "we will announce our wedding date." Applause began. Then a man in a charcoal suit stood near the bar and laughed. "Before you do that, perhaps your guests deserve to know who she's pretending to be." The applause died instantly. Seo-yeon's hand went still against Tae-jun's sleeve. The man lifted a folder and walked toward them.
Han Seo-yeon.
26. Former waitress at a Gangnam restaurant. No influential family.
No social connections.
No history anywhere near the circle. He stopped beneath the chandelier and opened the folder. Photographs spilled across the table beside him. Seo-yeon serving wine. Seo-yeon carrying plates. Seo-yeon leaving the restaurant in a plain coat. The room filled with whispers. "You promised us a future wife," the man continued. "Instead, you brought home a stranger who agreed to play a part for money."
Seo-yeon looked at Tae-jun.
His face remained still, but his hand had closed around the edge of the table. "Is it true?" someone asked her. Another voice followed. "Did he pay you to become his fiancée?" The questions multiplied. Seo-yeon could hear the faint clink of a glass somewhere behind her, the soft hiss of the fireplace, the rapid clicking of cameras. She could have denied everything. Instead, she stepped away from Tae-jun. "Yes." The single word struck harder than the shouting. Tae-jun turned toward her. "Seo-yeon." She raised one hand, stopping him. "I agreed to become his fake fiancé." Gasps moved through the room. "He offered me money. I needed it. I signed a contract." The man with the folder smiled as if he had won.
"There.
You heard it yourself." Seo-yeon looked directly at him. "But you left something out." His smile faded. She walked to the table, picked up one photograph, and held it toward the room. "You showed everyone where I worked. You showed what I wore. You showed what I earned." She placed the photograph down. "But none of that tells you what kind of person I am."
Tae-jun stepped beside her.
"Enough." The word rolled across the ballroom. He took the folder from the man's hands and closed it. "You wanted to expose my fiancé." His eyes moved across the room. "You succeeded." Then he turned to Seo-yeon. "But you made one mistake." She looked at him. "What?" Tae-jun removed the engagement ring from his own pocket, the diamond catching the chandelier light, and placed it back on her finger himself. "You assumed she was only pretending because I paid her." Every camera lifted. Every conversation stopped. From this moment, Tae-jun said, "Anyone who questions her place beside me questions mine." The man across the room took one step backward. Tae-jun's expression never changed. "And our wedding will happen sooner than planned." Seo-yeon's eyes widened. The contract had just been rewritten in front of everyone without a single signature. And for the first time, their enemies had discovered the truth, but they had not yet discovered what Tae-jun was willing to risk to keep her.
The
ballroom doors slammed shut behind them, and for several seconds neither Seo-yeon nor Tae-jun spoke. The music had stopped, leaving only the low hum of the building and the sharp click of Tae-jun's shoes against the marble as he led her into a private corridor. Seo-yeon pulled the engagement ring from her finger and held it between them. "You changed the wedding date without asking me." Tae-jun stopped beneath a wall of warm brass lights. "I changed nothing. You announced it, because they were trying to take the choice away from you." She stared at him, the diamond cold against her palm. "And now you make the choice." He reached for the ring, but didn't take it. "If you want to leave tonight, I'll have a car ready." Seo-yeon looked toward the closed ballroom doors. Beyond them, voices were rising again, cameras clicking, people arguing over the woman who had entered as a waitress and left as the center of Seoul's most powerful family. "And if I stay?" she asked. Tae-jun's answer came without hesitation. "Then I protect you until nobody can use you against me." "Even if that costs you your position?" He said nothing. That silence answered her. Before she could respond, the lights in the corridor flickered. Tae-jun immediately moved in front of her. A security officer hurried around the corner, face pale beneath the amber lights. Sir, the west entrance has been compromised. Your enemies are demanding that you hand over Miss Han. Seo-yeon's fingers closed around the ring. They know I'm here? They know everything, Tae-jun replied. The officer lowered his voice. They're offering a trade. Your control of the eastern ports for her. Seo-yeon looked at Tae-jun. Then give them what they want. His eyes snapped toward her. No, Tae-jun. No, the word echoed through the corridor. He took her hand, placed the ring back in her palm, and closed her fingers around it. You are not currency. He turned to the security officer. Move everyone from the East Wing. Lock down the residence. Nobody approaches her without my permission. The officer nodded and disappeared. Seo-yeon followed Tae-jun toward the private elevator. You realize what you're risking? Yes. Your business. Yes. Your family. He pressed the elevator button. Yes. She stepped closer. Then why? Tae-jun looked at her for a long moment. Because the contract was fake. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime. Seo-yeon didn't move. What? He stepped inside. The engagement was supposed to protect my position. He held out his hand. But somewhere along the way, protecting my position stopped being the most important thing. Her fingers slowly settled into his. The elevator descended through the silent building, its mirrored walls reflecting them side by side. Neither spoke until the doors opened into the underground garage. Black vehicles waited beneath cold fluorescent lights, engines already running. Tae-jun guided her toward the center car, but Seo-yeon stopped. If I go with you now, there is no pretending anymore. He looked at her. I know. She slipped the ring onto her finger herself. Then don't call me your fake fiancé again. Tae-jun's expression changed. Just slightly. He opened the car door for her. I won't. As the sedan pulled away from the estate, phones began ringing across Seoul, and the news spread through the night. Kang Tae-jun had refused the enemy's demand, abandoned the deal that could have secured his empire, and chosen the woman they believed was only a poor waitress. But before dawn, Tae-jun received one final message. If she won't leave you, we will make the truth public. He looked at Seo-yeon across the dark car. She saw the message reflected in his eyes. This time, there would be nowhere left for their fake engagement to hide. By sunrise, every major screen in Seoul carried the same photograph, Han Seo-yeon standing beside Kang Tae-jun, the engagement ring bright on her finger, while the words "fake fiancé" spread across the headline beneath them. Seo-yeon stood before the television in Tae-jun's residence, the blue morning light washing over the marble floor while the quiet hum of the screen filled the room. She watched the reporters repeat the contract details, the money he had offered, and every humiliating detail of her life as a waitress. Then Tae-jun entered carrying 2 cups of coffee. The bitter aroma reached her before his footsteps did. They told the truth, she said. He placed 1 cup beside her. Part of it. Enough to destroy your reputation. My reputation survived worse. Not your business. Tae-jun looked at the screen, then picked up the remote and turned it off. The room became silent. Then I'll rebuild it. Seo-yeon looked at him. And me. He stepped closer. You don't need rebuilding. Before she could answer, the front doors opened. His legal advisor entered carrying a thick file. The men behind the leak have been identified. Their claims can be challenged. Tae-jun took the file, but Seo-yeon reached for it first. Inside were documents proving the payment had been part of a legitimate contractual arrangement, not fraud, along with records showing the people who exposed her had deliberately manipulated the story to make her look like a social climber. She turned page after page. So they knew the truth. They knew enough to make people doubt it, Tae-jun said. But they didn't know everything. Seo-yeon looked up. What don't they know? He removed a final document from the file and placed it before her. It was the original contract. At the bottom, beneath their signatures, was a handwritten amendment Tae-jun had added after the ballroom confrontation. If either party ends the arrangement because of public pressure, all financial obligations remain fulfilled. Seo-yeon looked at him. You added this after they exposed me. Yes. Why? Tae-jun sat across from her. Because I realized you shouldn't have to stay with me because you owe me anything. He slid the contract toward her. So, I'm ending the fake engagement. Seo-yeon's fingers rested on the paper. For a moment, only the soft ticking of the wall clock filled the room. Then she removed the engagement ring. Tae-jun watched her place it on the table. You're free, he said. Seo-yeon looked down at the ring, then pushed it back toward him. I know. She stood. That's why I'm staying. Tae-jun didn't move. Seo-yeon. You hired a waitress because you thought nobody would question her beside you. She smiled faintly. They questioned me anyway. She picked up the ring and slipped it back onto her finger. But somewhere between the contract and all those cameras, you stopped treating me like someone you hired.
Tae-jun rose slowly.
And you stopped acting like someone who was pretending. They stood beneath the morning light, neither needing the contract anymore. Later that afternoon, Tae-jun held a press conference. Cameras flashed against the white backdrop as he stood beside Seo-yeon. The engagement began as a legal arrangement, he said. That part is true. Reporters leaned forward. But the contract is over. A wave of murmurs passed through the room. Tae-jun reached for Seo-yeon's hand. What comes next is not. Seo-yeon looked at him. He took a small velvet box from his pocket and opened it. Han Seo-yeon, will you marry me for real? She looked at the ring, then at the man who had once offered her money to pretend to love him. Yes, she said. The cameras erupted, but neither turned toward them. Tae-jun slipped the ring onto her finger, and for once, there was no contract between them, no audience to convince, and no lie left to protect. The waitress who had agreed to become a Korean Mafia boss's fake fiancé had walked into his world needing money, and walked out with something no fortune could buy, a love chosen freely, with her dignity still entirely her own.